Okay, got it. So we are now at block 2 of core concepts, and this unit is the last unit of block 2. Can you see my slide? Can you see the slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is the last unit. After this, there is block 3, which I'm going to be skipping because block 3 is kind of repeating whatever we have done. Block 3 is having units of Jewish diaspora, Black diaspora, European diaspora. We have done it in various units. In fact, if you see the course contents, there is a certain amount of repetitions. So we will skip block 3 and we'll come to block 4, where we are talking about human rights and nation and transnation. So this is the last unit, comparative perspectives on citizen practices. And we have talked about citizenship a lot in our previous units. These are some more ways how, and especially after we went about understanding the difference between diaspora, transnational, and the whole process, how this transnationalism, globalization, is changing the way citizenship is understood. Most of us understand citizenship and citizen and nation are typically a political concept. Citizenship is a legal concept in the nation concept. Nation is purely a political concept. And let's see how the perspectives come in. So, are you able to see a slide shift? Uh, is there a shift in the slide on your screens, guys?
No, sir.
No. Okay. Hang on. Let me go back. Let me see if I can get a slide shift now. Can you see the second slide now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Uh, Fine. My chat is on. You can stop me at any. So let's do a little background on citizenship. In fact, T.H. Marshall can be regarded as the key contributor. Universal notion of citizens based on equality and rights grounded on historical development. So you need to understand how the concept of nation came in. In fact, a lot of scholars feel nation is a new concept. Though there are some scholars who say that nation, the concept of a nation came long back, right from the concept of the Greek philosophers. They were talking about a nation, but a lot of scholars feel that the nation is a new concept. And in the concept of nation, which is a political entity, there is the concept of citizenship. So Marshall, in his book Citizenship and Social Class, citizen is full and equal member of a political community, i.e., state. State is nothing but a political community. Uh, Hang on, there is okay. Okay, fine, Sada. So state is a member of a political community. State is nothing but a political community. Explains citizenship as a process of expanding equality against the inequality of social classes. Social classes has always remained. We have defined it later. They have always been classes. For example, in India, there is the concept of caste. For all the voices which says caste does not exist, caste exists. There are various ways it exists, and so on and so forth. So citizenship was a way to provide an equality in terms of various classes, castes, etc. Because now, say for example, let's take the case of India with various castes. Now with citizenship, every citizen and the political process of election, every citizen, irrespective of class or caste, has a single vote. Look at the kind of equality we are talking about. So that's how citizenship came about. Have you been able to see the change in slides? I have changed the slide now into objectives.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So that means it's working. Understand the meaning and concept of city. Now, what happens typically with diaspora? We've already, over the last few units, looked at the fact that people are migrating. In fact, people have always been migrating. what happens, say for example, there was a very, and Africa becomes a very interesting case study. It's not just Africa, across the world we look at various case studies, but in this particular presentation I have a particular case study of Ghana. Now Ghana was typically a outpost of the African Atlantic slave trade. So inevitably, Africans from Ghana were taken by the traders for the slave trade. But Ghana was also, as an outpost, Africans were taken from inside Africa. Remember, at that time, there were no nation states. They were just people from Africa. Now, subsequently, they have been taken to America, where they have got rights, and meanwhile Africa has got the concept of nations. Now this person who was taken as a slave, where does he trace his ancestry from? Does he trace his ancestry from Africa, which is a continent, or from an individual state? Which state? How does this work out? How does where is the sense of belonging, his or her sense of belonging? Where does he or she have a legal right? There are a whole lot of concepts which now become open, and with globalization, where there is super hyper connectivity, where there is faster movement, these concepts now are playing out, and the states or nations do not know how to deal with it. So everybody is trying to negotiate, and we are looking at how they are negotiating. How do states or how do nations engage with their diaspora? So many parts of the world, ideas, characteristics, and form of citizenship defined as legal membership in a state are changing. Why? Because for a simple reason, people are moving. Once they are moving, initially what was considered a loss, now suddenly the nations have realized that it's no longer a loss, but it's looked at as a gain. Because now once these guys go out, once these people move out, they are not only remitting back and working on the economy, they have a whole lot of skills which could be used by the countries from which they have immigrated. Much of the debate over state membership is dominated by monolith and homogeneous understanding of what citizen. We're still talking about citizenship in a traditional way, where there is a state, there are people in that state, and we are assuming that they all stay put. But that's not happening. So Hammer coined the term denizenship to describe citizenship like status of long-term residence, as did several other authors who focused on quasi citizenship. So there are many authors who are giving new names to this whole concept of citizenship, because the whole concept itself is changing. Everything has become fluid. Say, for example, OCI is a basic type of diaspora membership policy. We'll look at a couple of slides on OCI also. How did this come about? Earlier perception, diasporic communities were having divided loyalties and could not be trusted. In fact, so much so that India's first Prime Minister Nehru was, when he was addressing the diaspora, he did make a statement that now that you are a citizen of this particular country, you have to be true to that country. Essentially, the earlier understanding of diaspora was that these people have left this country and have gone out. Now, because of globalization, there's a shift in the conception of citizenship. New features of citizenship, multiple names, transnational, postnational, extraterritorial, and there are multiple, ways nations are figuring it out. So, and one of the, remember, a large part of things why they happen have an economic, basis to it. There exist strong economic incentives for immigration state to strengthen relations with their overseas population. Remember the fact today the largest amount of remittance happens, the nation which receives the largest remittance is India, followed by Mexico. Nepal has almost 25% of its GDP out of remittances by non-resident Nepalis. So word to work, we have seen the definition earlier: re-territorialized or transnational, originated in a land other than the one with which they reside. We have looked at that earlier. Kaching Tolian as exemplary actors. Voter ID from a specific state in a
What I
country.
mean to suggest is that often we have seen that. So I think actually I want to bring a bit more context into what you were
Please,
just saying.
please, please.
So, we were discussing that how these people are bringing remittances from one country to another. But
Hmm.
then in our country, in or maybe in a country as vast geographically as ours, uh, so the interstate movement is something that happens across, and then the remittances flow is also from state to state basis.
Hmm.
So in that context, I'm thinking that we don't have such a thing as a citizenship specific to states, but at the same time we see that in terms of the diversity that these states have,
Hmm.
and this is something that also exists in Africa, and as we
Hmm.
were just talking and discussing. So I'm curious that how does it play out? Do you think it's a relevant argument that it could be considered, or not voter ID in that sense, but the state identity of an individual then also has something similar to do what citizenship in this context
So
is?
Shrestha, I am getting what you're trying to say. We need to understand we are right now speaking at a macro level in the sense of nation and citizenship. Now, India is a country, Africa is a continent. India as a country almost becomes a microcosm of the world in terms of multiple states with multiple diversity. And yet, the territorial boundaries of India define the nation state of India. Now, what happens within the nation state of India is still within the nation state of India. We have the larger context of a nation. And when we are talking about remittances, whether it comes to Bihar or Kerala or anything, it is coming to India because these are a sub-constituents of India. And the voter ID which is given to any state constituent is also a voter ID of India, not of individual states. You are taking it a little deeper. However, we cannot equate India with Africa because Africa is a continent comprised of multiple states where each state has its own way it functions. Shrestha,
Okay, sir. I think that's a very clear distinction. I got it.
take it. So, because if we start going much deeper, then we need to understand, for example, US, there is the eastern coast, there is a western coast, there are multiple time zones. It will not work that way because currently the way the world is structured, the way is structured in terms of nation states, and when a remittance goes from, let's say, diaspora in the US and the remittance goes to homeland which is India, then we say the remittance is coming to India. How it is distributed, we are not looking at that right now. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So diaspora by Kachin Tolian, exemplary actors of transnational movement, gain salience, particularly in the area of go. So globalization has now put in a new disruption. And the disruption is because the fact, till now, and remember, when I started talking to you people with respect to diaspora, I started with that example of that marriage system, the traditional Indian marriage system, where the girl goes from one family into another family. And the question is, just because she's got married and moves into the boy's home, the relation with the parents' home does not stop. In fact, if we start, doing the reductionist of, diaspora movement, it basically is where does the person belong? Where is the soul? What is the legal relation? What is the legal membership? So, in spite of the fact that she's the wife and she picks up the surname of the boy, her maiden name is from her own parents. So this transnational and this globalization, where these transnational networks have been dynamic in shaping cultural practices, formation of identity and reconstructing state strategies towards the states have suddenly realized that these people who have gone out are actually an asset rather than, in fact, there is an example of Mexico where people who had left Mexico were called traitors. A lot of countries and a lot of people feel that the people who leave are traitors. It's not the case. Suddenly, states have realized that this transnational movement, because of globalization and etc., actually becomes a positive thing. So Iva Ong, in the context of overseas Chinese, discussed their pivotal roles in reconstructing a new flexible capitalism in Asia Pacific region. In fact, this Chinese, remember in typically the US and the European context, Asians are not Indians. Indians are South Asians. So, how these Chinese, overseas Chinese, have been able to construct a new flexible capitalism in Asia Pacific region. Chinese economic and social networks introduce South Asian subjects as key players. That soft power that we talked about last time is a phenomenal value add to each nation. How these people project themselves in the global scenario of producing alternate visions of Asian modernity. And I was just thinking, and I will show you this example, and I'll talk about it. Let's go to the next slide. These newfound ways of accumulating capital have also promoted a flexible approach towards citizenship. So, in spite of the fact that communism is there in China, it's a single party system. Yet there is a model of capitalism, a flexible model of capitalism at work. Along with profit making, the Chinese entrepreneurs are also acquiring a range of symbolic capital which would help them economic negotiation and cultural acceptance. And it's a very interesting way how these diasporas are then able to get the world to see the nation in a different light. So, for example, look at this. It's a 2018 American romantic comedy drama called Crazy Rich Asians. Again, remember, Indians are not classified as Asians. Indians are classified as South Asians. And if you see the movie, I've seen the movie. If you see the movie, there is this Chinese guy who falls in love with this American and he brings her back home for a wedding. And how they have portrayed Chinese and the Chinese culture, that there is a certain amount of Orientalism, there's a certain amount of traditional, and yet the whole. How Karan Johar is exhibiting India to Indians, the Indian diaspora. Suddenly, the movie making has changed in terms of how it's being projected outside. And this is a Hollywood movie. And if you see, everybody in the most of the cast is Chinese. The screenplay, a Chinese, a Chinese novel, and how this projects in terms of the global audience. So Anjali Sai explores cause of migration patterns throughout the world, particularly in India, how the notion of emigration, earlier perceived as a loss, has turned into a gain in globalization. Return featured as a major trait of diaspora in definition of Safran and Cohen, the earliest definitions. In modern terminology, the diaspora option takes on a new meaning where return becomes redundant. So no longer are you looking at a return. Now, when you are not looking at a return, even though, for example, in the African context, a whole lot of African nations are wanting the diaspora to come back. So this is how various perceptions are there of various ways nations are working out with their diaspora. But today, actually, with let's say a WhatsApp call or a Telegram or a Signal call or a Google Meet or a Zoom Meet, you actually are connected 24 by 7. You don't need to be person to be physically there. Popularly termed brain circulation, it differs from return in the sense it does not aim at physical repatriation of the national livings abroad. Remote mobilization of diaspora resources and their association to the country of origin. China, Colombia, India, and African. Every country is today looking at how they can gain or use the skills and the various powers which their diaspora have. Usually done through a formal, institutionally organized network. For example, the scientific diaspora and the immigrant entrepreneur networks have helped capture both benefits and know of immigrants overseas. However, now the trick is now that most nations know that the diaspora have this potential. How do you engage? Do you still consider them to be citizens of another country? Or do you also consider them to be citizens of your own country? How do you work this out? How does the logistic work? How does the bureaucracy work, etc., etc.? Transnational citizenship or extraterritorial citizenship. So there is something of a new concept called post-national membership. So the post-national membership proponent is Yasmin Soysal, argues that membership rights are recast as human rights. So now inevitably we have to look at the fact that irrespective of these people who might be citizens of a political entity called a nation are yet human, and they have a human right, and the government, organizations, and individuals recurrently appear to this higher order principle. The post-national scholars put forth such normative claims regarding human rights being the new norm for globalized work. So inevitably, we still are seeing a lot of discourses, especially in the Western world, on immigrants and the concept of aliens or illegal immigrants. But the fact is, these are, from a post national membership point of view, they are humans and they are just moving. As during colonization, the Europeans moved to the third world. Now these people are moving to the Western world. He substantiates a point by using empirical instances to argue that human rights discourse is widely evoked in national policy language and government rhetoric pertaining to the rights of international migrants. So, inevitably, there are some rights these migrants have. And so, this is one concept in terms of, diaspora, in terms of migrants, a post national membership. Now, how this all came about was end of Cold War. The risks with regard to interstate ties also began to risk, which was followed by human rights era and globalized world order. However, we are also seeing a backlash across the world. In fact, specifically with respect to US and Europe, where there is an active, pushback against migrants. They are talking about building walls. They are talking about sending them. For example, Britain is talking about sending migrants to Rwanda, which is kind of weird. But there is an active talk about that. Individual rights, irrespective of a single or multiple nationality, acquired salience, as a result of which dual nationality became an acceptable feature. So, a lot of countries or nation states in the world are looking at dual nationality or dual citizenship. In such settings, citizenship moves on to a different trajectory from becoming more flexible. So, people, when they have to engage with the diaspora, are working out multiple strategies as to how to engage. Kim Barry's terms this reconfigured notion of extraterritorial citizenship as external citizenship, by way of which emigrant states acknowledge ties with a temporary and permanent emigrant. Absolutely. So, Shrestha, there is parallelly this, while the migration, as I said, the story of human being is a story of migration, while that is also happening, simultaneously, the concept of identity politics is also taking root. So, when America, which is a nation of immigrants, are talking about putting a ban on immigrant, it becomes a little ironical, but that's the way things are in the world. All these negotiations are parallelly happening, and it will not happen that, immigration will stop, because remember last time we read the fact that at the bottom of it, there is a supply demand. The West needs those people who are able to come and plug in because there is cheaper labor. There are the demographic dividend is not there. So look at the fact that today, when Israeli companies came to India to recruit people without any benefits in terms of welfare benefits or insurance or other things, there is a whole lot of youngsters who have lined up because they need work. There is unemployment is higher out here, so they are willing to go into a war zone because that allows them to do work. So there is an economic incentive out there.
Yes.
Citizenship in the sorry, yes, Shesha.
Agreed, sir. Agreed.
So Kim Barry analyzes citizenship in context of immigrants through a two-way model: external citizens as a status and external citizen as a practice. Now, a status and a practice are also two different things. India to Israel. That's right. That's right, Swadesh. So, there is a whole lot of recruitment which is supposed to happen in Haryana. And the worst part is they are not even giving them an insurance or various other benefits, but they are giving them incentives in terms of a higher salary. That salary also would be in terms of US dollar, which gets converted into a higher salary. So let's look at this external citizenship as a status and as a practice. Status which involves the state relating to its immigrant through economic, social, legal, and political incorporation. And practice would imply the relationship the immigrants would like to keep with their homeland. What are they practicing and what status? So, for example, today, a whole lot of diasporas would like to invest in their homeland because it gives them a higher status with respect to their families and with respect to the areas where where their families stay. And typically, Mexico is a case study, important case study, where immigrants earlier regarded as traitors now came to be acknowledged as national heroes and assets. And how did this come about? So this came about as follows: three factors. First is passage of Proposition 187 in California. Individuals whose presence were unlawful were denied basic access to public service. So, and inevitably, this globalization affects everybody who comes in the way. Anything today which happens in any part of the world affects all of us. And that's the very interesting thing to understand. And the nation states are understanding, and yet we are seeing things like wars, we are seeing strife, and inevitably everybody gets affected. So the first was the passage of Proposition 187, denied basic rights, access to public service. This led Mexican government to reconsider its policy towards its immigrants, as legislation was like to impose severe hardship. Subsequently, also, they had this North American Free Trade Agreement, Canada, Mexico, and the US, that could give a lift to the already weakened economy of Mexico. Dual nationality, therefore, became an instrument to invite Mexican Americans to invest in the economy. So remember also, at the bottom of most things that work, there is an economic incentive, or there is economics at play. People, when even there is a war, there is some economic incentive which works out in terms of the war, even besides other factors. So dual nationality became an instrument. Finally, the US government enacted the Immigration Reforms and Control Act in 86, which legalized initiatives to stabilize status of illegal migration. Temporary residents could apply for permanent residences. 1996, Mexican Parliament approved a constitution amendment allowing Mexicans naturalization abroad to regain. So Mexico has a concept of dual nationality. And interestingly, a lot of nations are going through this concept. They are debating, there are this domestic politics which nations have. The thing about India, countries like India and China, is always, as I keep telling you, its size, its population, and the diversity. So to negotiate the choppy waters of domestic politics, it always will be a little difficult for bigger countries like India and China. Mexico is again a smaller country with respect to India. Then there was diaspora citizenship in practice, identity, belonging, and transnation civic activism about Zimbabwe's. There's this scholar from University of Sussex, Thambani Golden, uh, analysis domains of transnational actions by Zimbabwean migrants in UK by focusing on their political and civil practices, civic practices. Diaspora citizenship is immersed with a sense of belonging and active. So if you see this word belonging comes very often, and we have talked over multiple units that inevitably this belonging becomes a very important part. How do you negotiate belonging and active practices of civic engagement in both host and homeland? So inevitably there will be a certain element of belonging. How do you handle that belonging? Besides belonging, how do you work out the legal status? How do you work out the domestic politics? David Cook Martin describes an interesting scenario where citizens opt for dual or second nationality as a means of value addition to their social economy. Again, there is an economic basis to it. But besides economic is always one basis. There is a socio-economic status facilitated, and the case study of Argentina. So when I was reading up this example, I wondered, why did Europeans emigrate to Argentina? So, in fact, it's a very interesting case study. You can Google it up and read it up. At one point in the late 19th century, the elites in Argentina felt that the country could progress by more whiteness, because a lot of elites in Argentina were mixed between whites and locals. So the elites themselves felt that if we could get more Europeans to emigrate, the country's economy will become better. It's a very interesting thought process. And what they did was they started inviting Europeans on a higher salary than what the Europeans were getting in Europe. And a whole lot of people from Spain, Italy, and France emigrated to Argentina, perceived an opportunity for nation building. Spain and Italy, through their, and now the fact is, Argentina had a just solely kind of scenario where the children of these immigrants could get citizenship, while Spain and Italy were working with jus sanguinis in terms of descent, and they maintained their connections. Now, this all happened till World War I, when the emigration stopped, because the war had come in, and then subsequently there were more immigrations. Declining economic and political fortunes in Argentina, the motivation in the mind of applicants to seek a second nationality was strategic. The value of citizenship increases when its meaning gets transformed from just providing membership to adding value. Whiteness, not only symbolic, Shrestha, not only was the migration from Spain and Italy due to dictators also. What I read, if Anjali, you can read it more, but one large context was the fact that Argentina started offering wages which were higher than what they were getting in Europe. And they felt that more white people, the whiteness could be symbolic, but was symbolic, but they also believed the fact that the whiteness leads to more productivity or more economic growth. So it could be a cultural construct, Shrestha. It could be a cultural construct. It could be construct because of various factors, because those elites themselves were mixed between the whites and the natives. Or it could be some other factor. Remember, factors are never deterministic. No event historically is deterministic. We only talk about deterministic to make it much simpler to understand. Shrestha, Anjali? Yes, absolutely. A lot of Jews took refuge in Argentina. Jews were anyway, because the original concept of diaspora of scattering were typically taken from Jews. Jews anyway had scattered across, and Europe. Remember, Europe, the in the first crusade, the largest the massacre of Jews happens by the Christians. The it was called the massacre of Rhineland or something. So Jews always had a tumultuous relation in Europe. For example, in Spain also, the Jews were asked to were asked to leave along with the Moors. Anjali? So, for example, look at this. I picked this up from the Punjab government website. So they have something called a non-resident Punjab privilege card, Punjabi privilege card. And this is, mind you, Punjab, India. I didn't check out Punjab of Pakistan. There is a Punjab province of Pakistan also. This is the Punjab state of India. They have something called a non-resident Punjabi privilege card. And also on the website, there are establishments across district which are offering discount in terms of hospitals, restaurants, malls, schools, which I thought was very interesting. I didn't go further down to see how many of them were there, but I kind of quickly picked it up and I thought this was very interesting. So, in all likelihood, these are citizens of India and they are non resident Punjab because this gentleman is from Oman. So, examining the impact of dual citizenship on economies of economic community of West Africa, Siapley has argued that states that recognize dual citizenship have healthy economies. In fact, substantiated by dual citizenship manages to increase foreign direct investment, gross capital formation, and household consumption. There are specific figures given in the course contained. Then there is diasporic citizenship by Languere, University of California, who studied about Haitian diasporas in diaspora in United States. Haiti is very close to US. Public policy issues pertaining to different form of citizenship practice. Diasporic citizenship, because it is appropriate by immigrants, has policy implications both for sending and receiving. That is why countries like India becomes a little complicated because it's a huge country. There are multiple implications. So have always had relation with the homeland. In one, it seems they have taken a new meaning that impinge on the cohesion of the nation state. So then there is this security angle which comes in. Transnationality becomes a fact of life with birth of a nation state and through international migration. Several features characterize the current expedition linking the diaspora to the home are transnational, move beyond boundaries of nation state. Individual migrants hold membership in more than one country. And one needs to also understand that today's, migrant is capable of having multiple identities, multiple national identities. Gone are those days when people get stuck to a particular nation. So today, when a person is moving the transnational concept, people have multiple national identities. The politics of simultaneity, in which citizens participate in the affairs of two or more countries at the same time. It's like every individual today deals with multiple social media at the same time, deals with multiple media at the same time. So the way we are structured today, the way human being is evolving, we have simultaneous multiple identities that will function. Claim or appropriate civil, political, social, and cultural rights, develop bipolar or multiple identities. Contextualized and played out has seen its boundaries wide open, becoming increasingly impotent in the presence of series of transnational practices undertaken by its resident population. So, for example, I was just reading this article where the Ambanis have bought in a property in London. In fact, a whole lot of Indians have bought a property in London. So there is this transnational practices. So today, a lot of Indians, are moving across. They are globetrotting. Okay, law, body, and soul. Katharina Schramm, University of Beirut, which is in Germany, diasporic citizenship under debate, examines the complex negotiation of diasporic citizenship in Ghana. There is a citizenship as an effective claim to belonging. Where do I belong to? So every individual wonders where he or she belongs to. So more often than not, as a citizen of a particular state, you feel your belonging is to that particular state. But what happens when you start moving? Where is your sense of belonging? Telangana Chief Minister visited London today, and today each state in India, Swadesh, each state in India also is able to understand that diaspora plays a very important part. The reason why the Prime Minister is meeting diasporas everywhere he's going, because it also adds to the local politics. Remember, the news travels very fast. There's a lot of transnational activity which is going on. So, chief ministers, for example, last time when I shared the Norca website or the Federation of Malayalis in America, where they are meeting the CM of Kerala. So, inevitably, CM being the political head of the state, it's very important for him to connect to the diaspora. Suresh?
Yeah, sir.
So, A belonging, B, citizenship as a legal status and obligation. There's a renegotiation of citizen through genetic ancestry. So, for example, as I was giving the example of Ghana, Ghana was an outpost. So, all those Africans who came from various parts of Africa, which are now nation states. So, where do they relate to? For examples, Indians in the undivided India, subsequently, three states got formed. Where does the genetic ancestry come from? Is it Indian? Pakistan was not there, Bangladesh was not there. So inevitably, there is certain amount of genetic ancestry from India. But India is the political nation state of India. Bangladesh and Pakistan does not come out there. So it becomes kind of difficult how you negotiate that. Articulated in terms of sole, dual citizenship, and embodied link. These citizenship claims and practices transcend and challenge the strict limits of nation states. And that's why nations are today, grappling with this or negotiating how to work this out. So there are these things about, for example, we saw how the Netherlands was trying to cut off dual citizenship. Then under diaspora pressure, they continued with dual citizenship, pointing towards a crisis of citizenship as a larger problem. So let's look at how India looked at it. India came about doing something called overseas citizenship of India, permanent residency available to people of Indian origin, their spouses, which allow them to live and work in India, allow cardholders a lifetime entry without and to own land, except I think agricultural land. OCI is not recognized as a citizenship by Republic of India or majority of nations, does not grant them the right to vote or hold a public office, can revoke OCI status in wide variety of circumstances, only valid with valid foreign passport. As of 2020, there are 6 million OCI holders, and the overseas diaspora is 32 million. So obviously, not everybody is opting for an OCI card or whatever is the reason. I didn't go into the reason. So this is one way of engagement. And as we have seen, Mexico is going through a dual nationality. So let's sum up ideas, characteristics, form of citizenship defined as legal membership. Uh, why do OCG countries not make their citizenship? Um, Shrestha, what do you mean by that?
So the Middle East countries, why are they not
Why they
citizens?
why they're not having naturalization as a citizenship way?
Yes.
Shrestha, I think it has to do with the fact that all these countries are nothing but kingdoms having a monarch, and I think it's a political thing to and these are basically extended families which own the complete infrastructure and the resources of those countries, and they don't want to give those rights to anybody else. So typically, for example, Ganga was telling me about the fact that earlier for example, I am sure Gangat would also substantiate that earlier Keralites were typically going to the Gulf, but now more and more are going to Canada and Europe because of the fact in the Gulf you cannot get a citizenship. Shrestha?
Yes, sir. But I
So
think uh, even then there might be some other, I think, economic benefits also. I think that what they are trying to deny those workers.
possible.
Uh,
See, possible.
Happen.
See, because it's a kingdom and inevitably there is no form of democracy out there. So the larger question of human rights, that the bigger rights that we talk about, and because of the fact that they have been driven primarily by the oil petrodollars, what we were used to call, the pressures are there. See, inevitably during the Arab Spring there was a lot of disturbance which happened. For example, in Saudi Arabia, when women drivers, there were a lot of women drivers who came out and then they were punished. See, inevitably, it in today's 21st century, it is extremely difficult to not give some amount of leeway into the way things are structured, and we are seeing how things are, getting disrupted across. But these countries are holding on, not giving citizenship, and I think it has to do with their kingdoms and extended families. Though, if you is a temporary, there is no freedom of association. Swadesh is writing that. So maybe you can, Shrestha, if you come across more information, do share. But I feel this is the primary reason. So globalization has shifted the concept of citizenship. Speak about golden visa. What about golden visa, Swadesh?
Yeah, UAE something giving golden visa to business people who are investing there
But they are still
and
not
quick
talking about
matching.
citizenship. But they're still not talking about citizenship.
Okay.
They are not talking about citizenship, na?
Yeah, yeah. But
Huh.
frequently the multiple exits and
So the idea is that, they don't want, see, inevitably, when you are, citizenship is a legal status of that country. Now, you do not want people who are coming from outside to get that legal status. Because once you get a legal status, then you'll start demanding. And inevitably, the large body politics of all these kingdoms are extended families. So it's basically the politics and the power is within the family. And that is the reason why possibly this is happening. Though, if somebody comes across more information, please share. See, golden visa and all these things are basically wanting to invest, but not giving that right which typically democracies or other nations would do. Anjali?
Hi, sir.
Hi. Veera? Yeah, tell
Uh,
me.
yeah, I just want to add some point, whether it is correct or not, I don't know.
Bolo.
There, that Middle East countries, their political profile, country's profile is a little different. Remaining all nation states are a little bit of different. Still, they are Islamic state of, that means they are considered their religion uh, in the in the governance and in their political profiles.
But Turkey
Remaining
also
countries
does
like
that.
Republic
Veera,
of
Turkey
like
also does that.
yes. They
But
also still.
but the
Uh,
fact is, there is a concept of naturalization. There is a concept of citizenship. People from outside can get citizenship. I think this
mhm.
has to do with more with the fact that they are kingdoms and being run by extended families of the king.
Okay. I think Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, all
Iran is
these
also
Middle
an
East
Islamic
countries.
republic. It's an Islamic Republic of Iran.
Yes. Next one, they themselves recognized as Sunni, Sufi, like their internal things, right? They maybe I am thinking once people want to get the citizenship in naturalization program, they have to convert their
No,
religion to
no, 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 no,
them
no, no.
like that. Maybe I am thinking.
No, no, I don't think
I
so,
didn't
Veera.
go
That,
to.
Veera, that is not the case because, for example, I think it was UAE or one of these countries which was really rocked by the during the Arab Spring, where
Mhm.
predominantly there was one particular sect of population and the ruling was another sect. and Saudi then sent their forces to quell that uprising. So inevitably, I think it is to do with the extended family of the kingdoms. It is like what Europe was during the Middle Ages. So inevitably,
Yes,
the
yes.
British Queen was related to the German king and was related to the other prince and princesses, and then they were fighting World War One.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, let me just
Same.
finish it up.
Yeah.
Let me just finish it up. Globalization has shifted the conception of citizenship, new features of citizenship like post-national, extraterritorial, strong economic incentives for immigration states to strengthen relation with their overseas population. Chinese economic and social networks introduced South Asian subject as key players in Asia Pacific. Notion of emigration, earlier perceived as loss, has turned into gain. There is citizenship as an effective claim of belonging. There's a citizenship as legal status, and there is negotiation of citizenship through genetic ancestry, sole dual citizenship, and minority links. Practice and transnational challenges. There are some suggested readings, and okay, yeah. Questions. Hang on, let me switch on my video. Hi, guys. So, Veera, I don't think so that would be the case. It has, I personally feel, though, again, if somebody comes across a little more information, do share. For I am seeing some new names for people who are meeting me for the first time, or I meeting them for the first time. If you want my PPT, you can send me a mail. Hang on, I'm putting in the chat box. See, just a sec. Dot com. That's my email ID. If you want to get in touch with me, I am not on WhatsApp. That's my number. I'm on Signal and Telegram, so you can write to me. You can write a mail to me. I'm on Signal and Telegram. I'm not on WhatsApp for people who I'm seeing for the first time. Golden visa are also given by countries like Greece. So Anjali, inevitably, again, remember the bulwark is economics. So countries or nations are trying various ways to attract investment. For example, a whole lot of nations are today laying out the red carpet for diasporas to invest because there is a sense of belonging. We know the fact that diasporas definitely have a sentimental value towards their homeland. Yet, unless the policies are good enough in terms of value of return on their investment, diasporas will not do that sentimentality only. So look at the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas, inking economic those MOUs, but the level of investment still is not to the level of how the inking happens, because at the end of the day, remember, economics works on many factors, and all nations are trying that, and that is where whichever nation is able to bring out these new schemes to be able to get those people to have policies which get the person investing value on their returns, people will not invest. Otherwise, these are all ways to lure people to invest in their countries. Anjali. But good, this is also a new information. Golden visas are given by countries like Greece. Any other question? Any other question? We have reached the end of our time. Any questions? Okay, so if there are no questions, then as I said, we have come to the end of block 2 in transnational studies, diaspora and transnational. We will skip block 3 because block 3 is basically about all the units that we have done in terms of Jewish diaspora, Black diaspora, Asian diaspora, and etc. etc. We'll come to block 4 and we'll start with the concept of perspectives on nation and transnation, and we'll finish with human rights. When we meet next Saturday, we will do perspectives on nation and transnation. As I said, the course contains, or the units have, a lot of repetitions. I try and gloss over the repetition bring in some additional, content from wherever I'm able to get, so that your perspectives are much more widened. Again, as I said, scholarly academics, we don't look at right and wrong. We are looking at multiple perspectives, because that will help us to understand the larger context of migration and diaspora studies. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a nice weekend and see you next Saturday.